My literacy story by Gustavo Miranda. My literacy began with learning Spanish mainly because um, I was raised in Mexico for the first part of my life, and that's where I learned to count. I learned to read, learned the alphabet in Spanish. It was later that I came to the United States that I actually started learning English. Um, it took years, but with effort and by mainly television, I was actually able to pick up English little by little, watching cartoons and watching old TV shows. That's how I was making the connection. In the neighborhood that I lived in, my environment was all Spanish speaking. This was in Chicago, and it was very segregated. My mother and my father, they all they did was speak Spanish at home, and that's all we were surrounded by. And the businesses around us also, it didn't matter what race they were. I mean, there was Polish a Polish person who owned a grocery store, and she spoke Spanish, so there was no real need for me to pick up English. I went to kindergarten, was a bilingual student, and then that's so that I slowly, progressively started learning more about English, but not very well, I would say, because it took me many years to actually grasp the language, and more than anything, my vocabulary was still exclusively what I was watching on television. Um, some of the vocabulary I picked up was honestly due to sports and me listening to the radio as well. And so I was already getting into the pop culture, listening to Michael Jackson, listening to the Bulls broadcasting over the radio. And so the love of the sport of basketball was another way that I actually started like wanting to learn English just so that I knew what they were saying about the game. Um, it wasn't until about fifth grade where I actually the light turned on and I could actually understand full conversations. And then by then I became the family interpreter, and so there was a big necessity for me to pick up the language a little bit better, because I needed to interpret for not only for my immediate family but for the rest of my family. So for any hospital visits, anything to do with the business, anything of that sort, I would have to actually go to these places. Like if they bought a car and talk to the salespeople, and so it was crucial for my family that I pick up English a little bit faster and learn it a little bit better. But once again, it was mainly out of necessity. Um, it wasn't until I joined the military that I had the actual motivation of like, okay, I need to know English, and I need to be able to not only read it, write it, but I need to actually comprehend it and be able to speak it well. Um, I had a very thick accent, and I was a military police, and in order to communicate anything, any emergencies like that, I need to go over the radio. Well, my accent would get in the way, and so I made a conscious effort to only speak English to improve my English ability, and then I also needed to read more, which was due to promotion. The way that I think that this is going to be helpful for me as a future teacher is because now that I'm back in the university, I'm actually learning why the language is it and how we construct sentences, and why vocabulary is important, why reading is important, and practicing both languages. I would be one of those teachers that would actually tell the parents, yes, keep talking to them in Spanish, but I would also encourage the child to teach the parent to speak English as well, because it benefits the entire family when more people in the family speak dual language, and that's ultimately what I would want. I wouldn't want them to lose their first language, but I would want them to share their language so that everybody in the family would learn English alongside with the child. That's my literacy experience. Thank you.